All right, well, I guess the 2nd of January doesn't really signal anything but what, block 2, but thought it was something different to start with. Big wrestling fan. Posted a long ass thread for no reason cuz it's what 3 in the morning and I'm bored out my mind. Can't sleep. Um so yeah, I think this could be a metaphor for what happens in season 24. Not that Mike and Shell would be prophets, but we know, especially after seeing the thread in the NDL ESPN for some of the noobs that don't really know, if you want to log in and look at the NDL history section, they have a lot of hardware in their coach profile for good reason, and also why they were talked about along with Noel in the big three, so to speak, of NDL lore. And with Mike and Shell coming back, things could really change. I feel sorry for the conferences they're in. If their connections can stay, things could get nasty. So yeah, welcome back to Inside the NDL, Season 24 opening edition. I do not have, if you probably are looking at this video and not listening to it, you notice there's blackness. Do not have my computer. I am at my parents' house on vacation for winter break. All my recording equipment is at home, so this is the best I can do, and I don't think I can even attempt to do second tries because it would take way too long. So this is what I got. So I guess getting started, welcome back to everyone for another season, last season on this year's game. It's always interesting because you have some people that get burned out. You have everyone really jockeying for position, looking at the third season. Either they're trying to take a team now that's going to be built to be a force to be reckoned with in next year's game. In some instances, you have people taking a team this season to make a run at a championship. And in other cases, you have teams or coaches taking teams with the hopes of building up, earning lots of points so they can go in the draft and reap the benefits of those that get fired going into next year's game. You know, a new game, well, I won't say new game engine, but a new style game. So maybe you can find a team that benefits you and the style of the game to help make a run. So a lot going on with that. I guess to get started, the first thing to look at would be the draft, as always. Coming off of a very entertaining season, we have the defending champ, Mr. Noel, who's back on the mountaintop and has a very good team going into this year's game. As most people know, LSU's been a pretty popular team, and they've done a very good job the last couple of seasons as far as Shaw being in charge. But yeah, very, very interesting how things turned out in the draft. Not just saying that as a Nebraska fan. Chesker, I won't mess with you too much. I think we've done enough on the message boards, and yeah, I don't want to poke too much fun at you. But draft, always exciting, always gets the excitement going for the season. And the first pick would be Doc, Penn State. It's still weird. I think it was 7 or 8 years he was at Pitt. Had a really nice run last season. close to having a shot for playing for a championship. But now he's got a team in Penn State. I'm sure he'll be high ranked to start the season. I haven't posted my top 25 or, submitted my top 25, but I have my top 15 so far. And, yeah, as long as he doesn't falter, which is seeing how he had Pitt and had the success that he had out of conference, something tells me that he has a very good shot at playing for a championship. And right behind him, you've got Noel moving from Oregon. Let me get the state right, to Louisiana, so Pac to SEC, BCS conference. He did a good job in the Pac-12. Obviously, he won the championship. He had to, but his only loss was to Arizona, and he moves to LSU, and that will present new challenges for him. Pretty sure he's been in the SEC before, but LSU has a pretty solid team. You got the Honey Badger. You've got accurate quarterback, fast quarterback. You've got the fast backfield. They have a lot of weapons. They fit the way he plays. I'm sure he'll do just fine over there, whether it's a one-stop. Well, I would assume it's a one-stop job because it's Noel. That's what he does, but you never know. He might hold him for one of his running mates. And going down, looking at the rest of the top 10 here, one pick, bare ass getting Oklahoma is no surprise. They were on the board. He was going to take them. Florida State with Just Giver. I know that he lost a cup game, I believe, to South Florida. May raise a few eyebrows. Just Giver had a really good season last year with Nevada and knocked off Miami in a bowl game. Once he gets used to that team, I think he'll do just fine. He's got, the rest of the week and whatever other time he uses for scrims to try to get things together there. Then 5 and 6 back-to-back, USC and Oregon. My first time in the Pac, so I think it's pretty cool as I go back to trying to find a team to Dynasty. Sorry, any Trojan fans. And 6 feet goes from having a option capable offense in Nebraska to one that really can be done in Oregon, but he's got more speed on offense. He's got a better defense, and seeing what he was able to do at Nebraska, I played him a couple seasons ago, pre-patch, and looks like post-patch he's really fit. He figured things out in Lincoln and got the offense going, a nice balance of run and pass, and very unconventional offense, so to speak, a little bit of everything, so it makes it hard to guess what he's doing. And moving to the Pac, taking the reigning championship team, I think he'll do just fine. And then looking at the rest of the top 10, D. Kane from Duke to Wisconsin. Litez, no, he's a North Carolina fan, moving to Clemson. Played him in a scrim last night, entertaining game. Think he'll do just fine in the ACC. He's got his offense looked really good. No, he's working on some things, but I like the way his offense is shaping up so far. And got Ohio State and Arkansas. Those would be the other 2 teams to round out the top 10. So then we have the next 5, 11 through 15. You got TCU going to Chusker. If you want to know anything about that story, just read it on the thread. Like I said, I'm not going to poke any fun at Chusker. I'm sure he's got quite enough over the last couple of days. And Plasma, 2 seasons removed from a championship, moving to Texas A&M. So for most of the guys, I believe the top-heavy Big 12, most of them stayed. And Plasma is just going to strengthen that conference just that much more, as they're going to be in the competition too for Big 12 champion. And then you have a Florida fan at Nebraska. You've got Nick at Michigan. I've posted, and I believe most people have seen by now, the Michigan-Texas, the thread that he put up about taking the line. He keeps moving the line, which is fine, getting people to – we'll see how that game goes. Michigan, I know. I've had them a couple seasons ago. They're a very good team. They're very fast. Other than a somewhat inaccurate quarterback who's streaky, they have so many things you can do on both sides of the ball. They're a very flexible team, so I think he'll do fine out there. Minnesota at 15. adjacents. Kentucky at number 16. Congrats on getting them. Trendon goes back to Buffalo. No surprise there, as they're the permanent number 2 team on his list. And then George, I believe he had Washington last season, so he returned as well. And then back-to-back Big East picks, South Florida and Pitt at 19 and 20. So not too bad. A couple of, as far as rankings with Kentucky and Buffalo, a couple of lower tier teams, so to speak, but they're high on the individual coaches list, so no surprise that they got picked where they did. And just looking through here, what else do I see that may stand out for some? I like RB going to Arizona State. I'm not just saying that because I'm in the Pac-12 and I'm not trying to sandbag, but he had a good season at Hawaii. He had a good start a couple seasons ago with Kentucky. In Arizona State, I mean, I don't know if they're going to be really great on next year's game, but they have a team that's built to win now. And I think if he can you got a really good quarterback. If the quarterback can be consistent, put up good numbers, I see that as being a surprise pick for a few people, a sleeper team. East Carolina, they've got one of the best quarterbacks on the game, throwing power, accuracy, and they've got so many weapons on offense. And pretty much as long as you don't take really crazy risks passing the ball, it's hard to mess up on passing. I mean, they're 3-4 deep in the wide receiver position. You got a tight end. You got a fast running back. I mean, you've got everything built for offense. Question is, can Cita is he going to be able to play good enough defense? Because you got guys like Houston out there. You've got Tulsa's got a talented team. You got to have to get the defense going to see if East Carolina can go back-to-back in Conference USA. A couple of Pac-12 teams there towards the bottom of that group of 10, Arizona and Cal. Outlaws was a runner-up in the SEC last season, so he's going to be a threat. What are we looking at? 31-40. I don't really know too much about many of these guys, so I mean, I know old school with Iowa. I believe I saw something in the draft that he didn't know that the draft was on Sunday. Maybe wrong in that, but it's a lot of new guys. I don't know too much about them, or newer guys, so yeah, and I'm not acknowledging Razorback, no offense. You have Louisville. It's one of 2 teams that I just don't really like to talk about, so please don't hold that against me. And then towards the end, the last 5, day 1, it ended up being 45 picks. You've got Air Force, 42. Pac-C taking Miami of Ohio. I think that's a good fit for them. They've got a pretty decent team. Should do fine there. And then you've also got Virginia, one of a tweener team. They have a low win goal, I believe. They have enough talent, and it's a team that you can get a few upsets with and turn it into a good draft pick for next season. So then going to day 2 for all the coaches that were canned after a semi-unsuccessful or unsuccessful season. Looking at the list here, you got some good teams as far as who were picked up. I believe T. Wade had Iowa State a couple seasons ago, so he went from them to Wisconsin going back, so he's had success there regardless of who is coaching in the Big 12. So I think he'll have a chance to shoot himself back up in the draft, get a good team pick. Hawaii going at 52. Also, they had success last season, Coach RB, so you'd expect him to do the same. The WAC's not exactly a real, with Boise being gone, they're not really a top-heavy conference, so the gap has been bridged, and you can pull stuff out there. Same for Sia getting Fresno. Now I'm looking at that at pick 46, so the WAC is going to be a very interesting race, just like it was last season. You've got, speaking of that, 56, Relio getting Nevada, kind of going with the theme. So, looking down here, of course, the 2 that most were looking at in day 2, You got pick 76 and 77. Big Mike and Shell making their returns, trying to the connection issues with these guys, hoping that we can officially have them back and get back to some normalcy here in the NDL with the servers being an issue on this year's game. So, yeah, you've got Mike going to the Sun Belt with ULL, and I'm pretty sure anyone that picked in the Sun Belt before him kind of had that, just depressed feeling, that really bad feeling you get in your stomach when something really shitty is about to happen. Everyone got that feeling, I'm sure. And then Shell going with Ball State in the MAC. And if his connection is fine, I'm sure people in the MAC feel the same way, Twins or not. So that really kind of rounds out the draft. I mean, the last pick was UNLV at 81, farm guy coming up, and I believe Vanderbilt was the last BCS team taken at 53. So that kind of sums up the draft. Other than, I believe, Nebraska, Kentucky, seeing how far they would drop and if they would go to a fan, and then also, the top picks are always intriguing because you're never sure which way people are going to go. So I think the draft is pretty interesting this season, and not a whole lot. The balance of power, I think, is going to be about the same. The same conferences will kind of rule the day here. So I'm not going to really look at players right now since I'm kind of limited in what I can do. What I would like to look at would be the breakdowns and conferences of where people are, so we can kind of get an understanding, because I know some people are going to put up some posts. I saw one, might have been Block, I think, that made predictions on how people would finish. So I'm not going to make predictions myself. I just want to take a look and see what we have as far as people that will be in contention, supposedly. So if I can pull that up here, and while I'm pulling that up, there's something else I want to take a look at in the cup. So let's get that window open and work on getting scheduling open, as that's not finished yet. Pretty close. Let's see. Bracket. And really should just be doing this on a laptop since it's right next to me. But anyway, looking at, there we go. So looking at, first of all, let's take a look at the cup. Well, I guess probably who owns who would make it easier to see why matchups are important in the cup. So I should start with that. All right. So ACC. You've got in the Atlantic Division, homie, of course, NC State. In the Coastal Division, Georgia Tech, Dealer, really a lot of guys, Georgia Tech, Miami, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech. So 2/3 of that division stayed. Virginia, Gambit coming in, and Bucky at Duke, or Buckeye, whichever you would prefer to be called as. And then in the Atlantic, you've got Block at Wake Forest, of course, homie staying at NC State. You've got Freak at Maryland, Just Giver at Florida State, Litez at Clemson, and Marine at BC. So, of course, you're looking at the Atlantic. After the season that Nevada had, the bullseye is going to be on Florida State. For one, because they represented the division last season, but Just Giver had a really good season with a non-BCS team. So now jumping to a team that's really talented in the spotlight now, as opposed to really playing kind of in the shadows. We'll see how he's going to handle the pressure, having a team with a lot of expectations. And NC State, of course, homie's always in contention for the division. He's been the last couple of seasons. Won 2 seasons ago and was runner-up last season. So it would be no surprise if he was able to win it again. And looking at the Coastal, You got the reigning ACC champ in Miami. You've got Virginia Tech, of course, who's always going to be a threat. The Miami VT game is going to be very big. And you got North Carolina, Oracle, 3 UNC fans in the same conference, as you've got Clemson and Georgia Tech, both looking forward to playing UNC. It's going to be it's got a pretty nice mix of coaches there, a lot of different styles, so ACC should be pretty fun this season. Pretty much, I think it'd be the same as last year. I know they got people saying they're not so strong. I think they'll be just fine. Just like last season, they'll have a good, strong showing out of conference, I believe. You got the Big 12. So Buckeye staying with Baylor, VVV staying at Texas, T-Fan staying at Okie State, and you've got Brett and Crows staying. Crows at Mizzou and Brett with Kansas State. And I believe that's everyone that stayed. I think everyone else was picked in the draft. So, Mizzou won the conference. Kansas State and Texas were right behind them. Texas had a chance to win it at the end of the season. They couldn't beat Kansas State because that would have gave them a conference crown. And that would have altered the picture of the championship, I'm sure. If Mizzou hadn't won the conference, that might have made people think otherwise. I know some people have differing opinions on if someone should play for a championship if they don't win their conference, but that's not to be debated right now. So you've got those 3 back. You've got Buckeye back, who knocked off Texas last season, so he's going to be a threat. You've got one last season with RG3, and he's one of the most dynamic players on the game. It's going to be a dangerous team and owner. You've got Plasma at Texas A&M, really talented team. Didn't really get on the field much last season, but they have a coach that's committed to running the ball and to playing good defense. And, defense may not be something people really talk about in the Big 12, but they've Plasma will make that work, I'm sure. So he's going to be a threat. Okie State, of course, is going to be a threat. Now, I know Texas fan is usually one to be really humble, but they've got a very potent offense, and he'll be in the running as well. And then even going down the list, Kansas, Iowa State, Texas Tech, they still have pieces. They can be dangerous teams. And the team I forgot to mention, I don't want to forget them, Oklahoma. Of course, they're going to be on paper favored because they have the best team in the game. You've got a coach that's really familiar with them. He had them 2 seasons ago, didn't do so well. But now he's more comfortable with the game. I expect him to do better. And you've got some very interesting matchups. OU and Texas, the Red River Shootout, but also controlled, owned, played with by fans of each team. So those games are always really fun to watch, at least from an outsider's perspective, as opposed to playing in, because those losses hurt a little bit more. So moving down to the next conference, we've got the Big East, and we've got the big hole in Pitt as Nittler is going to take over for Doc after he's been there for a while. You've got Talented staying at West Virginia. You've got Weiser and Dave with Cincinnati and UConn, and Dak staying with Rutgers. I don't know if anyone else stayed as well. I believe South Florida is new, and I know Louisville's new because I saw that in the draft. I don't remember if Syracuse was or not, but on paper, at least right out the gates, favorites. Talented, one of the most, no pun intended, talented owners in the league as far as user skills. He's right up there with Mike. You've got Dave, kind of struggled a little in the middle towards the end of last season. He'll be back, rejuvenated. And you've got Weiser at Cincinnati, who I believe beat Dave last season. But with no Doc around, not saying that Nittler can't recapture the magic that Doc had last season. But on paper, Cincinnati and UConn have to be the favorites since they've been there forever. And they know those teams very well, and they know their opponents very well. So those two, West Virginia, talented, hasn't. I don't remember the last time he won the Big East. It might have been. No, it was definitely not this year's game since UConn and Pitt did. But he's not. It shouldn't be too far removed, and we'll see how he does this season. Kind of went back into the shadows a little bit. Moving along, we got the Big Ten. So the Legends division. You've got Weasel staying with Michigan State. Sudden Blues staying at Northwestern. Everybody else is somewhat new. I mean, old school. Not sure if he's been to Big Ten before. But having Iowa's not a bad team. You got Nick at Michigan. Are the fastest team in the conference on both sides of the ball, so that they see what he does with the offense, what he's able to get out of Robinson in the run game. You've got Johnny P at Minnesota, so he's going to stay in the division and annoy the brother. And you've got UF at Nebraska. And Nebraska is the reigning division winner, so good pedigree there. See what they do. I'd say on paper, one of the Michigan schools should probably be the favorites. Weasel, 2 seasons removed from playing in the championship game, a tiebreaker away from playing in a Big Ten championship game last season. And then Michigan's a good team, and I'm sure Nick will figure things out with them. They were a tiebreaker away from playing in the conference championship game as well. And going to the leaders division, we've got Brown Bear staying at Illinois, Brev staying at Indiana, and I believe that's it. Maybe Purdue. I thought Victim was there last season. Don't remember. But you've got it's kind of hard not to say that. I mean, because Wisconsin, you had DK, and he had a good season, good start with Duke, which helped him get such a high pick to get Wisconsin. But as good as Wisconsin is, you got 2 capable running backs. You've got a good offense, good defense, good tight end. Penn State's got to be the favorite heads on in this division just because of the season Doc had with Pitt. And he was able to play teams that, had more talent on paper than his team had out of conference. And now that he's got one of the better teams in the game, that'd definitely be one of the more intriguing stories, I would say, seeing how he's able to take that. And now since he's in a bigger BCS conference, no offense to the Big East, see how he performs with the spotlight on him after the run he had last season. And then you've got Ohio State with Tig. I believe Tig had Tulsa the last couple of seasons. And Ohio State, kind of one of those teams that people, I guess, aren't expecting a whole lot out of them, but they still have enough talent in the places that matter to be able to put together a good season. So, I mean, they are the reigning Big Ten champs. So there's an interesting mix of teams there. But I'd have to say Penn State's probably going to be the favorite heads on based on what Doc did last season. And then moving to Conference USA, East Carolina in the East Division got to be the favorite. C-Dub's got a lot of talent there. Central Florida's not a bad team. With UGOOG, you've got MCX at Memphis, DJ Cowley at Southern Miss. I believe he's a Southern Miss fan, so that'll help give him an edge on some of the other guys in the conference that are new. And you've got Black Rain at UAB. You've got pretty interesting mix of coaches. I'd have to say Southern Miss and East Carolina, off the top of my head, would be the favorites. And going to the West, you've got Houston. Randolph's been there forever. You've got Untouchable at Rice, UAM, Tulane, FSU Penguin moving over to Tulsa. Good offense there. Until he drops out of first place in the standings, Houston's going to be the favorite. He's been there longer than anybody else in the division, and he knows his team well. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the game in Keenum, who seems like he's been around forever. But he's got things rolling. He had a good finish last season after he got his PS3 back. So he's going to be the odds-on favorite, not just to win the division, but win the conference. And the independents, you've got Ice staying at BYU, WJ staying with Notre Dame, and then Matt at Army. And then new to the group would be Rain at Navy. So nice mix of coaches there. Matt, the newer of the group, but very solid group of vets there. Going to the MAC, the East. Very good set of coaches. You got football Kelly start at the bottom there as far as alphabetical order by teams. You got football Kelly at Temple, good defensive coach. You got Paxi with Miami, Ohio. Just good coach in general, both sides of the ball. You've got Jeff Daddy at Kent State. And you've got KRG returning to Bowling Green after, I think he had Louisville last season. He had Bowling Green the first season on this year's game. And you've got AJ at Akron, where he's been before. And someone noted, which looked at true, he's had pretty good success when he's been outside of the BCS conferences, so you would expect him to do well down there. And then you have Trendon at Buffalo, as always, no surprise, I guess, until he gets Nebraska. That's where he'll be, and he's head set on making this a championship season, so we'll see what he does down there in the MAC. And in the West, you've got the feared one in Ball State and Coach Shell. You've got a returning coach. I don't want to butcher his name and get off on a bad foot with this guy, but Eastern Michigan coach. He was there before I was there, so always cool to see one of the original or older guys come back. You've got LGF at Northern Illinois. Go Bucks, Toledo, Hug Me, had a good season with South Florida. Last season pulled off a couple upsets. He's at Western Michigan. And Shell's going to be the favorite, of course, from the start, but there's some capable teams in there. It's going to be interesting to see. That's one of the stories, him and Mike. I'll get to Mike later, but seeing how they do. One, if their connections can hold up. Two, if one happens, what kind of success they'll be able to get with lesser teams this season. Going down to the Mountain West next. New Mexico will be filled by a farmer. It's going to be a long season for him or her, probably a him. And you've got Boise State's coach returning. You've got Chusker at TCU. You got Shift at Colorado State. I don't know too much about the other guys. But TCU and Boise last season, that's the game that ultimately came down to who won the championship from the conference, because neither one lost to anybody else. So I would expect the same. Air Force without John being there, and we'll see what heavily gifted is able to do with them. San Diego State, I know they have a good running back in Hillman. We'll see if they're able to get the run game going and pull off a couple of upsets potentially against one of those monsters. But on paper, one of those two has to be the favorite. No doubt about that. And moving to the Pac. I can't say a whole lot about this conference since I'm in it, but looking at the North, you've got Big Rye. And this is really looking at it on paper. This is a very what's the word I'm looking for? Vet-heavy conference, I guess, is what I'm looking for. So, good group of guys here. You got Big Rye at Cal, 6 feet at Oregon. Steam coming back with Stanford. George and Koo coming back with the Washington Twins. And then in the South, you've got Donkey staying at Colorado and UCLA Mac staying at UCLA. So, not too bad. Almost half the conference stayed, but even the guys that are in new, it bring an interesting mix here, so it'll be a lot of fun out here. The North, Oregon and Stanford are going to be favored it's just they have two of the best offenses on the game. And Oregon has a very fast one. Got Michael James, of course, Thomas at quarterback, and then Stanford with Luck. Got a good tight end. They're set at one of the most important positions in this game, with the defense being geared toward intercepting anything that comes around. We've got accurate quarterbacks and good quarterbacks. It helps a lot. And then in the South, we've got Outlaw at Arizona, UCLA, reigning division champ, coming back. You've got RB, had a good season at Arizona State, and I know on paper Southern Cal is going to be the favored team to win, but seeing how I have yet to win anything with any team, favorite or not, I'd have to say UCLA is easily going to be the odds-on favorite because he's the reigning champ. So it's his crown to lose to see who gets the opportunity to play. More than likely Oregon, Stanford. Not saying that no one else can fit in that picture, but it's going to be very hard for those guys to be knocked down. You go into the SEC. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, all stayed. Assuming now that Jason's is at Kentucky, I'd see all five of those guys. Unless K-Dog has somewhere else he plans on going, those five should be able to stay there as long as they want. Champ will be fine at South Carolina. He's a two-time defending SEC champ. You've got Florida, who's definitely going to make a bid to represent the division, and Dre as well. Vanderbilt, wasted memory. It's going to be tough sledding for them and Kentucky because they're just not rated as good as the other teams. Same for Tennessee. It's just those three teams are so top-heavy. It's really hard, especially Florida and South Carolina. Florida with their speed, and South Carolina just talent everywhere. But still, it's a good mix of coaches. It should be interesting to see how things turn out there. And then the West, you've got Noel new at LSU and still new at Arkansas, both going in the top 10 popular picks. But you've got Bama and Big Red staying there. Bama staying at Bama and Big Red staying at Auburn. So this might be the first time in a while I think that we don't have the week one or block one matchup with Noel and Big Red, but they play during the season, so that just seems weird. So used to seeing that to start out the year. In Mississippi and Mississippi State, Beer Cop and Bernie, they're naturally going to have a hard time. I know their teams aren't rated that bad. Mississippi State did win the division, but no odds-on favorite. They don't even need to go into why. Bama will be right behind him, Arkansas, and Auburn. All three of those guys are capable of putting together a good season, and they can beat Noel, have a shot at representing the division. But Noel, he's got to be the odds-on favorite, and not just to win the conference, but to go beyond that and have a shot at defending his crown. And then going down to the last two, we've got the Sun Belt. You've got Big Stimpin at Arkansas State, who's at FAU, Baker. FIU is really weird because you're most of the time when you look at the Sun Belt, that's kind of the breeding ground for new coaches. Not the case this season, as you have, if you want to consider John Avett, so he's been here a couple of seasons, and Workman. These are not guys that are new. These guys have all been around the block. So you got Nasty there, Basketball Jake, my dad, and Vikes. But the big one is Big Mike, and pretty much is his conference to lose. No offense to anybody else. We all know how talented he is. He could take a team of middle schoolers and play them against a college team and still be able to find a way to win the game. So until he gets a conference loss, I'm not paying it any mind. I expect him to win the division, or win the conference. It's his to lose. And I'm sure he's motivated after not being able to play for 2 seasons, and just someone, I don't remember who it was, throwing up the thread about the history of getting his 300th win, which I'm sure he'll get this season. It won't take many extra games to be able to make that happen. And then lastly, we're going to look at the WAC here. So you've got Seed at Fresno, who's coming off of winning a Big Ten championship. Victim, I believe, had Purdue, so he moves to Hawaii. You got Beefy at Idaho. Matt had a good start with Virginia, tailed off towards the end of the season, has San Jose State. Louisiana Tech had a good season last year, and you have Crimson coaching them, Relio at Nevada, T-Ball, New Mexico State, and Quack at Utah State. Really, it's, I guess, based off of last season, you would say that Fresno has the advantage because Seed had a good season with Ohio State. It's got a good running back in Robbie Rouse. So you've got a game changer there, but this is going to be a very wide open conference, I believe. I'm sure someone will probably pull away towards the middle or maybe a group as we had last season, but I think everyone's got a pretty good shot at being able to make a run here and win that conference. So best of luck to everybody in your respective conferences. Just a general look there, and we'll X out of that screen. Next up is the Cup. And I'm sure some people aren't too happy with the randomness, as we've seen on the message board, and I've talked to a few coaches who are depressed about where they ended up. Rightfully so. It is what it is. You never know who you're going to be matched up against. So looking at it, I'm looking at the bracket on the board. I guess we'll say North and South will be the left side. North will the top left corner, South the bottom left, West the upper right, and East the bottom right. So looking at the North bracket, what do we have here? You've got, in bracket 1 of it, dividing it up into 4 parts, you've got that's kind of a cool game. You got Beefy and Kentucky, or Beefy and Jason's playing Idaho and Kentucky. They play during the season, coach rivals, so it's cool to see them play in the Cup of Ohio State and Georgia Tech. I know people are expecting Ohio State to win just on paper, but you've got Georgia Tech. There will be a very game offense, and they'll be ready, gearing themselves up for the season and see what they can do. Arizona probably is going to be the favorite to come out of that portion of the bracket. You've got that ULM, so you avoid Mike by a letter. And you've got Vanderbilt and UNLV on the other side. So Arizona's a talented team. I believe they're a B+. They've got a good coach. They've got good weapons. They'd have to be the favorite to come out of that portion of the bracket. Go on to the bottom part. It's got a very marquee matchup in TCU and Virginia Tech. Chusker's a good coach. He plays good defense. His offense has been pretty solid. It's the best team that he's had, I believe. So Virginia Tech will get an early test to see where they stand coming into this season. They've had a couple of good runs, and even though they had their struggles last season, they finished very strong. And they've got a good run game. You've got a very good cornerback out there, ball hawker. So that will be a very interesting matchup. And the winner playing NC State and Kansas, the real Trey, I believe, and Homie. So you have potential Virginia Tech NC State matchup in the Cup, which would be pretty cool. But you got Tulsa and ECU. The winner is going to get a bye, a conference game, I believe, as well. I don't know if they play in the season, but I know they're both in Conference USA. But TCU and Virginia Tech, I think they would be favored. NC State has the edge if they can beat Kansas because they'd have a home game, so that bridged some of the talent gap there. So going to part 3 of the bracket, nothing really overwhelming. This could be a portion of the bracket where you could have kind of a Cinderella run because you avoid playing any superpowers. Army versus BYU, Marshall versus Washington State, Akron versus Hawaii, I like that matchup. And Southern Miss against Western Michigan. So those are the 8 teams you have. Not that they don't have good coaches, just that they're not rated high on paper. So you have the potential for one of those guys to jump out and make it to the Sweet 16. Not too bad. And going to the bottom bracket, former Big 12 matchup in Nebraska and Texas, like that. And interesting matchup, Oklahoma State against West Virginia. It would be very, very cool. One that would be nice to see on the Wadden Network. Potential Oklahoma State-Texas game there, as they will play in the season. And for as good as those teams are, you would expect, whoever comes out of those 4 to roll to the Sweet 16. The reason that they may not is you have Mike on the other side. Well, granted, Mike, you have ULL playing Eastern Michigan, and you have Illinois playing Memphis. Mike is going to be favored to come out of that group of 4, and I don't care what the talent gap is with a Sun Belt team. As long as he has a controller in his hand, he's dangerous. So, and he will be playing at home, so that'll help nerf some of the talent gap. Dangerous team. That it wouldn't even be a surprise or a sleeper or an upset if he made it out that far, but I'm sure as anyone is, as long as Mike's in the tournament, you're hoping someone else can knock him out so everyone can breathe a sigh of relief. So that's the North bracket. Going down to the South bracket in portion A, part A, Notre Dame, Wake Forest. Should be an interesting matchup there. Block had a good season with Michigan, WJ consistent. You've got UCLA MAC there with Iowa, and then you've got UConn sitting on the other side of that bracket. So I would say UConn and probably Washington coming out on that side. UConn was playing in the Cup final last season, so a potential UConn UCLA or UConn Notre Dame matchup out of that portion of the bracket doesn't look too shabby. And going to B, Auburn, I feel bad for him. You played Noah last season with Oregon, and then you have to play Oregon again. That's a tough matchup, and pretty much the same thing stands that I said in the first preview that I did inside the NDL. Run the ball, don't turn the ball over, and get stops. They're capable of doing it. It was a close game. With a new coach, 6 feet, it's going to bring in a different type of offense, different style of defense. So it's going to be tough, but I'm going to probably lean towards saying Oregon's going to come out and they get a bye, so they get to skip the second round. You've got Boise, Missouri, and Arkansas. Arkansas should be able to beat Central Michigan. And then with Boise and Mizzou, that's going to be a very interesting matchup there. Regardless of who comes out, you're going to have to travel and play Arkansas, and SEC speed is what it is. It's a tough matchup. It's not an easy place to play, but I'm seeing Oregon probably coming out of that, getting to the Sweet 16. Going to part 3, the 8 teams here would be BC, Stanford. Well, let's look at the bottom part first. We got Cal, Syracuse, New Mexico, and Tulane. On paper, probably looking at Cal being able to come out, but pretty, a shot at making it to the Sweet 16. At least, being able to pull an upset, and you're going to have a home game. Because on the other side, Stanford probably is going to be able to beat BC. Miami and Houston, which should be a good matchup, but Miami is just so talented, it's hard to look past that. And then you have a marquee matchup in Stanford and Miami. And really on paper, whoever wins that one should probably be going to the Sweet 16. A very, very good matchup. Dealer and Steam, both in their second seasons with the team, so they should know them well. Should be a barn burner there. And going to the final part of the bracket, you've got Baylor, I'd see probably coming out in the top half. Baylor-Indiana matchup would be pretty cool. RG3 against potent passing attack. And then you've got Pitt and Cincinnati. Well, you got Pitt and Cincinnati on opposite sides, but Texas A&M Plasma, I could see beating Cincinnati. That should be a good game with Weiser. And if he can knock off Pitt, not only do you get go to the Sweet 16, you'll probably end up playing Baylor on the other side, and you have a home game against them in a preview of what'll happen, a conference game. But they would have home field throughout, going all the way through. I think they could make a good run. All right, so going to the other side, we have the West. And in part one of the bracket, yeah, Florida should probably be able to run to the Sweet 16, even though every game will be on the road. No offense to anybody in that part of the bracket, but Tennessee matchup early on, that's just like during regular season play, and that's a tough matchup. Florida's just so talented. They have a great coach too. If Paxi can beat Feisty, you have a matchup where, well, two guys that coach in real life, but Paxi could maybe give him some trouble because of coaching knowledge and how some of it can work on the game. But you got to give Florida the edge to come out of that one. And then on the other side, the best team you have is North Carolina, and even at home, Oracle's good coach. I don't think he's going to be able to beat Florida. So Florida, I see them moving to the Sweet 16. Part two of the bracket, potentially interesting matchup. You've got Penn State, who could be matched up against Arizona State. So early tests and kind of see where they stand. And then on the other side of the bracket, South Carolina. Sorry. It is 4 o'clock in the morning. But South Carolina with home field advantage against possibly Penn State matchup. That would be a good one. And that is going to decide who probably would go to the Sweet 16 in part two of the bracket. And then 3, you got Mississippi State. Mississippi State probably should get out of the first 2 rounds. And then on the other side, a marquee matchup in Bama and Wisconsin. And I'd have to say the winner of that matchup would be my pick to go to the Sweet 16. And the last part of the bracket, I like that matchup. So you've got Ole Miss, Minnesota, Rutgers, and Duke. If I had to pick one, I would say probably Duke is getting out on that side of the bracket. If Michigan and Florida State can take care of, defend their turf, you got a Florida State-Michigan matchup early on, and that would be a great matchup. Those two, one of the few teams outside of a Florida team or SEC team that can match up with the speed of Florida State. Big matchup. Oh, I'm sorry. Crap. Forgot USF beat Michigan, or I beat Florida State. My bad. Got all excited over nothing, man. So, yeah, USF, Michigan. So, USF pulled off an upset. I don't know how much I want to read into that just yet. I'm going to pick Michigan as getting to the Sweet 16 out of that part of the bracket. On the other side, you go to the last bracket, the East bracket. You've got, in part 1, LSU should make it out on their half, assuming Oklahoma can get. Remember when Bearass had him last time? He lost in the first round. He wasn't exactly thrilled about that. I remember the instant message conversation we had. I assume LSU and Oklahoma should make it respectively through their brackets, and regardless of how their matchup turns out in the regular season, it's hard to argue against the defending champ. So I will go with Noel as the pick to make it to the Sweet 16. From that portion, portion 2, I'm just going to say Georgia. They have a bye after playing Southern Methodist. And then you've got Northwestern, Kansas State, and Purdue. Dre's very comfortable with his team. I'm just going to side with him. I think he should be able to make it to the Sweet 16. And part 3, you got Clemson and Michigan State. Whoever wins that game, which I'm going to side with Michigan State for now. Even though I've seen Clemson play, but I do remember playing Michigan State. I'm probably going to side with Michigan State for now. That should be a really interesting matchup, though. Michigan State on that half of the bracket. Now, on paper, USC should be able to beat Buffalo. I'm sure Dave probably slipped Mike $100 bill or a 50 to make something like that happen. That's really what we're talking about your own team. I would assume on paper that I should be able to take USC on that half of the bracket, that game, and then UAB against Kent State, and then you have USC at home against Michigan State. Regardless of being at home, both times we played, Weasel gave me really tough times defending his offense. I see no reason why it would be any different with SC. So I'm going to say Michigan State is going to come out of that part of the bracket for one of the last 2 spots in the Sweet 16. And then the final portion, another one where you have an opportunity really by not having a marquee team of making a run to the Sweet 16, maybe beyond, playing at home. You got Air Force and Arkansas State, Colorado State and Utah, UCF, Florida Atlantic, and SDSU in Louisville. I really, really, really want to say SDSU should make it on the bottom half. But I'm siding towards Central Florida coming out of there. And then the top half, I don't even know. I'm just going to go with UCF and make it easy. So those would be some roundabout way I came up with 16 teams in the Sweet 16. I'll probably listen to this again and write it down. And maybe, I guess it might be too late to do a pool. But I still may. I should have thought about that when the season started and tried to have everyone do that because I could have had a prize. I might still figure something else out. May just accept the games already played. So, that's it for the Cup. And moving into what we have for this season, open up a few more windows here. We have, in week 1, see if we have any marquee matchups here. And they've got a classic in Weasel and Weiser, Michigan State and Cincinnati. You've got the brothers playing Western Kentucky and Army, Matt and John. John moves from Air Force to another team capable of running the ball. You got Rainey, very underrated running back, and you got Jakes, can't throw worth a damn, but he can run. So you got options there. The Rutgers-Baylor game should be a good one. I see some usual games, Bama and Idaho, myself and Georgia Tech. Quack and Old School, I'm pretty sure that's a game that gets played every year. The real Dre and Trey, Kansas and Georgia. So you've got some of those there. Buffalo and MTSU, nasty, interesting matchup. After the whole long thread about, I'm not going to go into that. I'll leave Trendon alone. I think he's been messed with enough. You've got Doc and T-Fan playing again, Oklahoma State, Penn State. Tig and 6 Feet, Oregon, Ohio State. Oh, of course, how could I forget that one? VVV and Nick. We'll see now that Nick has a more competitive team on paper. See how that game turns out. I got my money on Nick for now, even though he keeps changing the line, trying to convince me otherwise. But, yeah, I still feel confident in that pick. You've got Miami and Florida again, starting season dealer. and the old ball coach, flag football man at Florida, NC State and UConn, Washington and Kentucky, and Georgia and Jason's in that one. Hug Me and Notre Dame should be interesting. Because Hug Me, for those of you that don't remember, was upset LSU a couple seasons ago when Shaw had him. And let's see how he does against Notre Dame. A rematch last season of the infamous interception safety, hurtling into the end zone safety. So South Carolina and Virginia Tech are going to run that one back. See how the rematch turns out. Should be a good game, just like it was last season. And Nick mentioned some other games I'm not going to get into. So that's what you got looking for week 1. Week 2, you've got Buckeye and Big Red playing again, Baylor and Auburn. FSU Penguin and Light-Tez, Tulsa and Clemson. Should be a pretty interesting matchup there. Arizona State, East Carolina should be a good matchup too. Two good offenses. NC State, Eastern Michigan. I'm pretty sure. I'm just guessing that'd probably be like, hey, welcome back to the league. Let's renew our rivalry that we had before you left. Old School playing Bama, usual. Nidler and Brett. That should be an interesting game. Pitt and Kansas State, two teams that'll be expected to do well this season. Got LGF playing Knoll. That's a good matchup there. Houston and Miami, Ohio. Two good coaches. I like that matchup. And right next to it, Ball State and MTSU. Shell and Nasty. Let's see how that one turns out. It should be a pretty good game, assuming they can get it played. Sorry. Weiser playing Doc still, even though he's out the conference. So Cincy and Penn State. Tig and T-Fan playing again. I want to say Tulsa beat Oklahoma State last season. If not, it was really close. So Ohio State playing in the horseshoe this time. Florida State and TCU. That should be a good matchup. Pretty sure Just Giver will be raring to go for that one, so it'll be back on track. Mississippi State, UCLA should be a pretty good matchup. VT and UConn doing battle again. Myself playing South Carolina. We had a close game last season, so seeing if we can repeat and have an entertaining game. I mean, not necessarily have to go in overtime, but just something to start off the season on a good note. And based on last year's success, Nevada and Texas should be a good game as well. See what Nevada's made out of to start this season. So that's what we're looking at for week 2. And I know the schedules aren't finished yet, but I'm going to go ahead and take a look at week 3 and 4 and see if we have. I know some people already be starting conference play. Oh man, it's time to go to sleep. Let's see if anything jumps out at me here. VT and Kansas State should be a good game. VT is definitely taking the ball and running with it and out of conference, that's for sure. Nasty and UConn playing. A lot of talk about that in that thread. Whiskey and Miami should be a good game there. Battle of a team that, well, they both run the ball, but Miami seems they both will run the ball. Miami more of a speed team as opposed to physical, so we'll see who wins out in that matchup. Those are always really intriguing matchups. Clemson, Penn State should be a good one. UNC and Oregon State should be good as well. I'll leave the conference ones alone. Of course, Notre Dame, Michigan always play week 2. That'll be good. And I think for now, those are the only ones that really jump out at me. I don't know if I said Arizona State, Florida State. I may have. If I didn't, I'm just throwing that one in there too. It's week 3. Week 4, Pitt, Arkansas. Shell, Trendon. I know that's a conference game, but still. Shell's motivated, as is Trendon. Should be a good matchup. And scrolling down, Rocky Mountain Showdown. I believe Dave said that's a renewal of a rivalry. Also playing Eastern Michigan. Southern Miss and Louisiana Tech should be a pretty good match. Those 2 really underrated teams. It should be decent. Mizzou and Bama. If I remember right, I want to say Mizzou won last season. Well, he had to if they played because he was undefeated till he lost to VVV. So, yeah. Good matchup playing in Mizzou. Michigan State, Notre Dame. So, WJ getting both Michigan teams out the way early. And then you've got Houston, Nevada. On paper, should be pretty solid. As will be Miami and Oregon. And I have to say, probably at the moment, Miami, Wisconsin's a good game. But based on the speed that Oregon has, I'm really curious to see how these 2 teams do against each other. I think that's going to be my matchup of the season. So far, yeah. I like LSU and the Oklahoma matchup, but I'm still going to side with that. Wisconsin, South Carolina should be pretty good, too. You've got 3 running backs in the game capable of running for 1,000 yards on the season easily. Penn State and Texas A&M, Plasma and Doc, 2 very successful coaches on this year's game, so this will be a good matchup. Of course, Kentucky and Louisville. Rival games are always a big deal. Central Florida, South Florida. And yeah, I think that's going to be it. Which reminds me, now that I think about it, since I did bring up LSU and Oklahoma, what week did they play? I was pretty sure that they played early on in the season. I want to say I just overlooked that game. So let's take a look here. And I'm messing this up. So we're going to try this a different way. Let's see. Yep, week 1. How did I miss that? That would be my second favorite game, which is why I was surprised. I'm pretty sure I had said it, but it never crossed the mind. So should be a good matchup. So kind of what out of conference looks like right now. I believe it closes Thursday. I'm gonna check on that. I mean, it closes December 22nd, Thursday at 11:59, not 12 o'clock, like how it makes that specific. So yeah, that closes Thursday. It is Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. For those of you, even though it's up for everyone to see, both in the open form and through email, and through being a announcement, whatever you want to call it. The polls are open, so you should vote and get that turned in so everyone can get their free points. No one wants to lose points just because. And I'm sure that there's a few people out there that barely lost their job that could have kept their team if they would have had their polls. One thing, too, I know it's been said a couple of times, not saying you have to do it this way, but a very easy way to make sure that your poll goes through is or to prevent any problems is to vote your top 25. Maybe you don't have to write it down all the way out by name, but just put the abbreviations of the school. So you have the list of the top 25 sitting there. Put it in. I still use the drop down method, even though the sliding method is very cool too. And as soon as you vote, go directly to poll results. Or is it poll results or is it poll voting? I don't remember which one you go to, but it shows at the top the little green bar. I'm not logged into the NDL2 site, but if you go there, it'll show you that you voted, because it has a little green link and you can click on it to see your 25. So definitely check that after you vote. It makes it a lot easier if you just write the top 25 down or type it in, however you do it, spreadsheet in Excel, just so you have them. So in case you need to go back in and put it in, if it doesn't go through, it's not gonna be something that you have to completely think out all over again. So really, for now, that is it. What I guess I'm pretty sure mostly everyone has signed their contracts by now. So yeah, you got your stuff going on in your conferences. I'm sure Plasmas did a pretty good job in ours. Give them some recognition there. You've also got predictions for who's going to finish where. I mean, some people are voting, some the commissioner is just picking. So yeah, very cool. And we'll be gearing up for another season. So it's going to open up Christmas Eve. I know that I'll be looking for my usual people since I don't have a whole lot going on. Try to get the games in early before Christmas, because I don't know about you guys, but Christmas Day, after I watch the Lakers lose and get embarrassed like they've done the last couple of years, I like to sit down after eating and get some quality time with the PlayStation. So new games or game or Call of Duty, whichever it is what I would like to do. So for now, I guess I'll say good luck to everybody on the season. Anxiously awaiting Friday night, the NDL's version of Christmas Eve. So good luck to everyone. Get some scrims in while you can, and let's finish strong on NCAA 12. With that, I am signing off.